back to his days in college. And there's the human side in me says, I so admire the honesty there and the openness of that.
Yeah.
But then the Football Observer, Diana, I'll start with you as the reporter, also says that is another cautionary sign that he has thought what all of us have thought, which is that he's one hit away from his career being over and potentially real problems.
Yeah, and he's done such a good job. He takes so many questions, right? He doesn't want to be the face of concussions of the NFL, right? You're talking 2 concussions, a head injury all over a 4-month span. He's done a lot of work with doctors. And yes, you're right. There's a human element here where, of course, he had to take the time and talk to his family and think, is this the right thing for me? But from a football perspective, I can tell you, I spoke to sources in Miami. There was no panic when Tua said that, right? Because this isn't like their quarterback took 3 weeks, a month, 2 months contemplating, do I want to play this game anymore? He was at the Super Bowl in Arizona talking to the media about how he can't wait for this season. So did it cross his mind for a brief second, we'll say maybe a day or so? Yeah, it sounds that it did. It makes sense. But from a football perspective, I don't sense Miami feels like this upcoming season, he's going to have to deal with these type of injuries because he's been doing so much work to try to prevent these.
Well, that's really what it's about here. But that's the concern, right? Again, the most important piece of this is that hope the young man has a long and healthy life. And we all understand this area. That's more important than any of the rest of it. And so this is such a complicated conversation to have because, again, I do so admire his openness in that. But there is also the part of you that says this is quite a... I mean, they have Mike White. They have a Super Bowl. They have the team that is so all in to try and win a championship right now, and the quarterback is one hit away from who knows what the situation.
Yeah, and it's not surprising that the Dolphins exercised Tua's fifth-year option because they're pot committed to him being their quarterback in this window that they've created with all of the trades, bringing over Tyreek Hill, signing Teron Armstead, and trading for Bradley Chubb. Like, they're trying to win a Super Bowl over the next 2 to 3 seasons. So I understand that, and I get why both the player and the organization want to try to move past the injuries that Tua suffered, specifically the concussions, in 2022. And as a player, I empathize with wanting to be out there. But there is also the reality of brain injuries. And the part that was cringeworthy in Tua's press conference yesterday was when he's talked about the doctor saying that he was not at any further risk of CTE, and that's not really something that's going to affect his position, and pointed out the other positions that are more at risk. And I said, how can you definitively make a statement like that when this is an evolving science that we yet don't know enough about? So that's the part where it's hard to trust the medical professionals in and around the Miami Dolphins, people that Tua are consulting, especially given what we saw in week 3 and how that played out 4 days later in Cincinnati in week 4, where he's getting carted off the field. So I'm concerned about Tua's welfare, both in the short term and the long term. I hope that all of the injuries and the concussions are behind him, but as a player, understanding what we know now about concussions, it's hard for me to have confidence that he's going to be healthy and available in 23.
Danny, what thoughts did you have about all this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they picked up his 5th-year option because they should, because he's really, really good at football. Hearing Tua talk, one, we all thought that the reality of him contemplating retirement would be a thing. Great, that happened. I was actually very encouraged by hearing Tua talk yesterday, because I felt how important football is to him. He even said, I love this game too much. I can't imagine not playing this game. I want my son to see me play this game. And if you just take a step back and think about everything that he's been through, that's why I'm encouraged, because he knows the reality of football. He's the one who's lived these injuries. And yet he's still, if I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, I'm sitting there going, I've got a quarterback that absolutely is all in. And there's been a little bit of a narrative around Tua that maybe he's not as passionate as some other players. To watch him stand there and express, I love this game. And even though I've experienced what I've experienced, I still want to play. And that's Tua's decision. None of us have any right to sit here and say whether he should or should not play. He gets the information, he experiences it, and then it's his decision. And I was encouraged by hearing him talk.
It's his decision right up until it jeopardizes the business model for the NFL, because let's not forget, the boogeyman for the NFL is brain injuries and concussions. Going back to a decade ago when it bared itself out, where the NFL was burying information about brain injuries and how NFL players were more at risk of it. So that's the one thing that I would push back on a little bit. Maybe it's Tua's decision from a personal standpoint, but when you look at the macro, the NFL has to consider how this could potentially impact its business model moving forward.
That's fair. But to go back to the specifics of Tua in all of this, like, I think what Dan is saying I agree with, that if there were questions about the passion that Tua had, he's answering them here, and that's fine. But I think that it is also impossible not to look at the situation and say, if you're the Dolphins, you have complete confidence he's going to play a 17-game season for you and be there to win you a championship. But he's never been able to do it before.
There is a risk because all we can do is go by the history, right, at this point. But look, he's doing jiu-jitsu. He's trying to work on the different types of hits. He's saying, look, at least he's trying to think of ways, and he has people advising him so he can improve in this area.
The questions are not, to me, about anything he can control. They're about things he can't control. And no one is suggesting he gets hurt on purpose. Dan, I got 15 seconds. Go real quick.
2/3 of the NFL last year played multiple quarterbacks.
It's true.
Can we stop the narrative like Tua's the only one who got hurt? I understand that he has a history of it. I'm hopeful he plays all the games this year. But we talk about it like Tua's the only one who missed games last year.
What is your sense of this? Diana's telling us the Texans are not looking at a quarterback at 2.
Yeah, I mean, Schefty's the best in the business, so there is a truth to what he's hearing. I look at this class, and I just think it's too talented for teams to pass on it. I'll go to Houston at 2. Number 1, I've been on this. Houston should try and trade for Lamar Jackson. You have the picks, and you have the cap space to do it. If not, let's say that's not an option because Baltimore says no. If I was Houston, I would take Anthony Richardson out of Florida. 2 reasons why. Number 1, I think the accuracy concerns or narrative around him are incorrect. I've pointed out that 106 teams in college football caught the football better than Florida last year. They were I can go to the Missouri game. There's 3 passes in that game for 40-plus yards that get dropped. So if you took a throwaway, which he had 19 of them last season, and 1 drop per game, 52% completion percentage goes to 63, and now no one has anything to conversate about. Number 2, 13 games started. And I understand that. But the reality is this, athletic quarterbacks that are used in quarterback run, they are allowed to simplify defenses. I think you can ease his learning curve in the NFL because of that. And I want to talk about this game real quick, the Florida State game, because everybody has kind of hit me up on social media. Dan, go watch the second half of Florida State. He had 9 drops in the second half. 9 drops in the second half. I look at the physical talent. I go big, fast, strong, athletic. Loose upper body, powerful arm, plenty accurate, highly intelligent, very good work ethic, and great character. How does the young man fail? If you're Houston and you think you got a good coaching staff, which I do, I take Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, Richardson and C.J. Stroud and then Will Levis to some degree are all the quarterbacks we expect to be sitting there when the second pick comes, whatever winds up happening, because we think Bryce Young will go number 1. What do you think should happen with the second pick?
Yeah, I'm with Dano. You got to take a quarterback.
Richardson.
Yeah, I don't know if it's Richardson or Stroud, but what I will say is you have to take a quarterback because this is a franchise that's fighting for credibility with their fan base. This is a team that's had a grand total of 11 wins across 50 games over the last 3 seasons. At some point, you have to recognize it's a quarterback-driven league.
I get
and go get that guy.
What if the guy that you've fallen in love with is either Will Levis or C.J. Stroud? Because Diana's telling us, and this seems to be what I'm hearing, is that C.J. Stroud's stock is dropping a little bit here. He may fall a little.
In terms of how these quarterbacks are being looked at, it seems that Levis is a little ahead.
And so if you're
what I'm thinking,
if you're the Texans, do you trade out of 2 and then trade up from 12 someplace and still get something else and get the quarterback you want, maybe somewhere around 8?
No, you don't get too cute, G. If you got your guy and you have the opportunity to draft a guy, then you take him. You don't try to trade back and acquire more picks and then trade back up from 12. You don't do that, Dan. You take the quarterback that your front office has a conviction on.
Is Anthony Richardson your quarterback week 1? Are you playing him as a rookie?
Yeah, I'm playing him as I'm playing whoever I draft number 2.
And you think this Texans roster is built ready to win right now?
I'm not saying that they're ready to win, but it's hard to get better at football if you're not playing football.
Right.
And so in today's NFL, with the rookie wage scale, it makes sense to see what you got at the quarterback spot and let the guy get experience on the job. It doesn't behoove them to sit a guy and let him languish while you're running out Davis Mills every single week.
You read all these tea leaves here. You have a defensive-minded head coach here. He's got a 6-year contract here. Look, you have quarterbacks like a Will Levis who ran a Kyle Shanahan type offense, who is ready to play. It makes sense that they look at a guy like this, but for them, they may be able to
All
play.
right, here's my request. Our producer is Julian Goldsteak. Get me McShay in our second hour. The challenge is on the table. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.